Welcome to the Power of Music podcast. Brought to you by JM International. Get ready to explore conversations with those making a difference through music.
Hello and welcome to the Power of Music podcast, brought to you by JMI, Jeunesse Musicales International, the network of NGOs that empowers young people through music across all boundaries. In this episode, we're joined by Blair, an accomplished musician, composer, writer, and teacher with a storied career spanning decades. Based in Stockholm, Sweden, Michael is known for his percussion and drumming contributions to iconic albums by artists like Tom Waits, Elvis Costello, Lou Reed, and Hugh Laurie. Beyond his music, Michael is a master of unlocking creativity, fostering collaboration, and turning strangers into partners through his workshops and events. Our conversation touches on Michael's unique journey, from moving often as a child to mastering the art of meeting people to becoming a semi-psychologist for the bands he worked with. We explore why learning from different art forms is essential, how to elevate others' artistry, and hear some unforgettable stories from Michael's time in different cities, like New York. His anecdotes and insights reveal the transformative power of connection, collaboration, and of course, music. As always, if you enjoy our content, don't forget to subscribe, like, and rate the podcast. We hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Can you first share a little bit about your, I guess, pretty extensive journey into music?
Oh, man. Well, I just turned 70 a week ago.
Congratulations.
You know, luckily nobody thinks that I actually looked like that.
No,
so
you don't.
I look a little more like Santa Claus all the time, though, with the white beard. But I'm trying to act like a child as much as I can. Let's see. My parents listened to a lot of music in the 50s. I was born in 54, and we moved around a lot, but we took the records with us, and so I heard show tunes and Broadway stuff and big band like a lot of Americans did in the 50s when they were little. And my parents, though, really liked jazz, popular jazz singers. So we had Nat King Cole, Ella Fitzgerald, Tony Bennett. So that was the kind of thing that I listened to a lot when I was little. So for some reason, actually, I started playing accordion when I was 7. I was living in Southern California for the millionth time because we were a military family and we moved. But there was a music teacher that from the local music store that came from door to door, and knocked on the doors and, do your kids want to take music lessons at this school, at this music shop in the area? And that day he had accordions with him, these little like kid size accordions. And I thought it was the coolest thing because you put it on your body and you have to use both hands, and it was fun and it was loud and there was all kinds of stuff. So I started taking accordion lessons when I was 7. And I was playing, like French songs and Bulgarian stuff and kid music to start to learn to read music and that sort of thing. And then after a few years of that, of course, in the early 60s, in America anyway, the pop scene started to happen. So it was the Four Seasons, the Beach Boys, the beginning of Motown, and I was listening to a lot of stuff like that. So I started playing some of those songs on the accordion, like early Beatles and Dave Clark 5 and stuff like that, and working out the bass parts. And so when I was 10, which must have been the winter of 64, 65, I started playing drums. Because, of course, earlier that year, I was way into the Beatles anyway. I had the first album that was released in the United States, in 63, actually, with the first songs, Please Please Me, and all that stuff. And so I was way into them when they were on TV. And in my generation anyway, so many people in all of these interviews say, well, in February 1964, when everybody in America, sort of everybody in America, saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. It was a Sunday night variety show. That changed everything. Then everybody wanted to play guitar and sing and play drums, and including me. So that's where I got started.
Do you still play the accordion from time to time?
No, I don't. I wish I did. I ended up having a really good 120 bass Italian Crucianelli accordion. It was really wonderful with all kinds of different stops for different sounds, and so I was lucky to have a good accordion to play on. But oh right, and I got the color of the accordion was the same color as Ringo's drum kit. That black oyster pearl, the Ludwig, the gray and silver kind of thing. So it must have been early 64 or 63 or 64 when I got that accordion. Sort of like my parents were nice enough to me that I sort of like bumped up a level, and I was playing concerts on accordion and stuff like that. So, but anyway, no, the last time I actually played accordion was the end of the 80s. Because, this is jumping ahead, but to answer the question about the accordion, in the late 80s, I was in Elvis Costello's band called the Route 5, and there were a lot of accordion parts on some of the songs, so I played accordion. I sort of got through them. It was okay. I was singing background and playing accordion and had all kinds of stuff. But anyway, so getting back to the 60s, I started getting a lot of records. I started buying all the Beatles records, Dave Clark 5, Rolling Stones, Simon and Garfunkel, Motown. So I was listening to a lot of rock music and pop music when I was 10, 11, 12, and started playing in a band in school when I was 12. Like almost everybody else who played drums and guitar, it was with friends from school. So I did that. And then through high school, American high school, like 15, 16, 17, I was into sports and theater and music and politics, and I was the president of everything, and was an actor and all kinds of other stuff. So, but I was still taking drum lessons, and my what is it in the career counselor, the person that was talking to people that were going to graduate from high school, to then what are you going to do next, and so she recommended a certain college for me to go to, because originally I was going to go to college to read psychology. I was going to be a psychotherapist, I thought. I ended up being a psychotherapist anyway, but not a registered one. Working in a million bands and developing artists and dealing with record companies and parents of students and all that other stuff. So I ended up being a bit of a therapist anyway. But I ended up going to this one college for psychology. But then in that first term, I changed. My girlfriend at the time was a classical flute player, and I started going to all of her concerts. I was already playing drums. I was going to be in a concert at school as a drummer. But then I decided to really focus on music, so I changed my major. And in America, you've got a major, at the school, at the college level, the focus of what the stuff was. So I ended up studying classical, avant-garde, opera, jazz, blues, everything that was sort of like a 70s major music program, college level thing. So I ended up going to 2 different universities and getting my degree, getting my diploma in percussion performance. So I was a multi-percussion player: timpani, vibraphone, marimba, glockenspiel, all the different world music things, shakers and drums and hand drums and stuff from China and Japan and all that stuff. So I, as many people did in the United States, we were all interested in fusion music. The Weather Report and Miles Davis and the acoustic stuff and the electric stuff. So everybody was just playing every percussion instrument. In my world, my friends were playing all the percussion instruments we could find.
I hear in your story, president of this club, part of this club, an actor here, so many different music genres, so many different instruments. Is that part of your innate curiosity, your personality, or how would I see that?
Boy, I think you put it better than I do. Yes. In a military family, when I was a kid, we moved around so often that I had to meet people like almost every year for a new school, new teachers, new neighbors. That's what happens in an American, military family. And this was in the 60s. So I learned how to meet people. And also I think from being in politics and wanting to be in politics and theater, that was a way to get to know people in my school, the teachers and the administrators, and I wanted to meet everybody, whoever was the most interesting or the most powerful or had the most progressive ideas. I had to find out pretty fast, because if I waited, then the school year was over and I was going to move somewhere else. So I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it was part of my nature, but I think I got pushed pretty hard because of moving around so much. And I've taken that with me. I mean, I still teach, and I live in Sweden now and have for a long, long time. But I still teach and give master classes and workshops. And so it's always been, I think you're right, it's always been an interest.
Let's continue the journey.
Okay.
So you went to classical, you trained percussion player,
Yes.
but that's not how the story ends. I can spoil as much.
Yeah, I know. It's when I was at the bigger school in the University of Illinois, south of Chicago. It was and is a well-known percussion school department with all the various teachers that have been there. And then my teacher in the 70s actually recommended me for a job with a band that was a world music, semi-classical improvisation, new age group, that was fairly well known in the States and toured a lot. And one of his former students was in the group. So my teacher in Illinois recommended me to the leader of this group, this world music group called the Paul Winter Consort. And there were 3 percussionists, an oboe player, saxophone, electric cello, all kinds of stuff, So, and I got the gig, actually. I went to the audition and got the gig. I was 22 and I was in graduate school. And so I left college. I got the first degree and started the second degree, but then I left to go to New York to play in that band. So hello world, my first recording sessions, touring all over the United States, not making tons of money, but being in a group that was well respected, and players knew who the players were in that particular group. So I was lucky, that and I moved to New York with my dancer girlfriend at the time. This was the summer of 77.
And then what happened?
Well, like most of my colleagues and people that became close friends in the late 70s, everybody met everybody. Everybody was in a lot of different bands. It was the punk scene. There was the electric fusion scene. There was the funk scene. There were people that were playing on TV shows. There were lots of Greenwich Village singer-songwriters, and almost everybody I knew was in like 5 or 10 different groups at the same time, including me. So you'd play in Greenwich Village, for a singer-songwriter, and then later that night you'd go to a punk club and play, in a slam dancing, power trio, with blood flying all over the place and beer bottles and all that other stuff. And then, a couple days later, it would be on the Upper East Side playing like fiddly diddly, super fast, amazing playing, like electric fusion, like blah, 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 way too many notes, but you learned how to play. So I learned how to learn songs very quickly and to work with a lot of different artists very quickly.
Was there any of these particular genres and experiences that you, I would say, loved the most? Or do they all have their own charm?
They really all had their own charm. I mean, what ended up sticking with me was mostly including the multi-percussion, world music, marimba, timpani, vibraphone, and drum set combinations. So if there were singer-songwriters that liked those sorts of things, sort of like avant-garde folk or avant-garde fusion kinds of things, those were the things that I loved the most over time. And also storytellers, singer-songwriters or pop songwriters even, or metal songwriters or punk songwriters that had stories, that were good with characters. So I'm a language person, and I love to be in situations where my musical contribution is to help the artist tell their story. So that's not maybe a genre answer, but it's about how the artist is approaching their own work. Then that would be impressive to me, and then I could help support them.
And as you mentioned, this was a time where everyone met everyone. Was that part of the, let's say, the zeitgeist, or what was it that kind of sort of happened?
Well, it would, like you said, it was natural for me, with my personality and growing up in that kind of family where I met so many different people. But also, it's survival. I mean, you go to New York. Most people go to New York to meet as many people as possible, whether you're an actor or an actress or musician or composer or teacher or whatever it is, the work that you want to do. The people who stay in New York or break through in New York, at least in my experience, have been those who want to keep meeting more people to then maybe find more projects to do. So, I was never driven as a lead singer or an artist myself in that way. So I didn't want to put a band together around me, but I wanted to find people who were really driven that way. And there were and are a lot of driven, focused, artistic, creative people in New York. That's why you go there, or why you go to London, or why you go to Paris, or if you want to write film scores, then you, in North America anyway, you want to go to Los Angeles. You need to go where the work is.
So I can imagine there's artists listening that find networking quite daunting.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe introverts or just people with some bad experiences. What would you tell to these people?
Well, to relax a little. Coming from me, being an old guy that's starting to look like Santa Claus, I'm finally taking my own advice. But maybe it would be, if one can take the attitude that every single thing is networking, so it's not going to a mingle, a special mingle. It's not only going to a special mingle at like a music conference, or it's not a special meeting where you need to meet a whole lot of people, or there's an opening there's a release party for somebody who's got a new song coming out, or a record, or whatever you call them in these streaming days. Maybe it's everybody you meet is a possible friend or possible contact or possible, way to be educated and learn more. So if one is not worried about every single moment being, does that work or does that not work, or did I say something bad, or was I too nervous at this point, or was I too shy at that point? Add them all up. Just keep going. Go to more stuff. Go to more concerts and introduce yourself, even if it's just, hello, I'm blah, 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 and I really like your music. That's enough to get a conversation going, I think.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I was talking to someone the other day about a project that I started, and I was like, yeah, what I learned from this is that if I just bring 4 people together, we can build something quite amazing in not that much time and effort. And then someone thought like, yeah, but you also have such a big network. And I was like, big network? I never network. I was like, yeah, but think about it. And I was like, yeah, that's true. So I think that indeed, when you don't feel it's networking, then it might actually be still very much working in our favor of building a network by just connecting other people, asking questions, being interested, genuinely interested, trying to offer help where possible.
That's really a good way to put it. Being genuinely interested. That then being shy won't really matter, I think, in the long run. I think you're absolutely right. I get a little tired of, especially like online and on LinkedIn or at conferences and stuff, where a lot of the consultants, it seems to me, a lot of consultants are sell. How do I market myself? How do I tell everybody how great I am? How do I network, and all these lists and TikTok, and it's never ending. And I find that, maybe it's because I'm older, but I find that overwhelming. It's too much for me to really be constantly on like a TikTok or an Instagram and everything else, and going to rehearsals and teaching and being a father and grandfather. So adding all that stuff up, I just sort of, it's just too much. So, but actually through Facebook, I've found a lot of people that I went to school with when I was a kid. So that, in a way, has been really fascinating, because I did move around so often as a child, until something like a Facebook or classmates or some of the some of the early like 90s and aughties, kind of social online programs. I didn't really know where a lot of people were, but then I started to see online school programs, and then Facebook really caught on, and so I actually had a chance to sort of then reach out again and go like, hi, are you that person from that elementary school from Newport, Rhode Island from 1964, and then find out that they are. So this isn't really a professional kind of thing, but yeah, I'm just interested in keeping in touch with people because I think it's fun.
And in the beginning of the interview, you mentioned, and I'm going to assume half jokingly, that initially you wanted to study psychology. Mm-hmm. Funny enough, I did study psychology myself, but then you didn't, and still ended up sort of a half psychologist in many bands. What did you mean by that?
Well, because it was interesting to me anyway, and I had studied some things in American high school and thought I was going to really be a counselor or a psychotherapist or something like that professionally. My head was already in that way of thinking, of process, how other people think, what is creativity, what is consciousness, what is being shy, what is being aggressive, all these different kinds of concepts. So I was really interested in those things anyway. And then watching how my teachers dealt with different kinds of students, not only conflicts, but just encouraging creativity, encouraging friendships and relationships, and learning more about oneself as an artist. So it was like yeah, this is all the same stuff, but I'm not sitting on a couch talking to someone in that way. But on the other hand, if I'm the drummer or a percussion player in a band or a recording session with an artist and or a producer, depending on what the team is, what the structure is, I think I have responsibilities to find out what they really want. And artists and producers are still also searching for what they're asking the players to do inside a project. So it's maybe again, because of my personality, I want to then start to get information from the people who have brought me in to a situation to help them go forward with their project. It's their project. It's not my project. It's not my face on in the old days, it wouldn't be my face on the front of the album cover, and it's not my, publishing deal, and it's not my record deal, but I would be part of the team, that would be able to do that. So as an active team member, maybe that's the answer to your question, that I always felt that I was an active team member. So that means that I need to contribute. I need to ask questions, and I need to give options to the artist and the producer and the other players as quickly as possible, so everybody can absorb what the information is, make really good decisions, play them for the artist, and go on.
Let's go back to New York.
Mm-hmm.
Networking left and right, part of your personality, maybe because you were taught to do that through the way that you always moved.
Mm-hmm.
Being a psychologist in many bands. If you look back on this time and all these years, are there any memories or moments that come to mind immediately, or that are most salient at this moment?
There's one big one, actually. I mean, there are a lot of them from all these different groups, but there was one that sort of changed my life, literally. That after years of being in New York, I was being in all these different kinds of bands. None of the bands really broke through. There were bands just before my generation, like Blondie and the Ramones and Television, and bands from CBGBs and that sort of thing. Those bands really broke through, but they were older than I was. But most of the players that had been born maybe in the mid-50s or so many people learned how to play really well. I mean, there were wonderful players on every instrument, and avant-garde instruments, and making up their own instruments, and noise bands downtown, and university classical groups from the north, part of Manhattan. Everybody that I knew was really exposed to a lot of different stuff. So, point being, so now it's summer of 1985. I've done some off-Broadway stuff. I've started to work on some records, playing in some bands that were actually good enough to tour a little bit, and working a lot with modern dance, in theater, which I think is important to work with people who aren't musicians, so to learn more about different art forms, and then bring that into what I can do as a musician. So Tom Waits, the American singer-songwriter Tom Waits, he was living in New York with his family, and he was taking acting classes, and he was writing a whole lot of new music. So, and he was on Island Records at the time, and his personal assistant for that project was asked to put a list together of musicians in New York that could be interesting, people that are sort of that other people talk about, and making breakthroughs on their instruments, or avant-garde this or noise that, and but could sort of deal with a lot of different kinds of music and different sources, and everything from blues to New Orleans to funk to Irish folk songs to opera to all the stuff that an artist like Tom. There aren't very many artists like Tom, but so I ended up on that list somehow. All these different bands, the networking thing. Somehow, somebody somewhere thought I was an interesting enough percussionist. So I ended up on the list. And the engineer, the sound engineer, is also somebody that I had worked with before. The networking thing again. So I was recommended by him and someone from the record label. So I got a call. Tom Waits is going to call you and ask you to come in, for a record, for a session, like this next few days. So I organized all my instruments and got all my cases together, and Tom called, and he had just started an album called Rain Dogs. It was like the first couple of days of recording. So I got the call, and I went in, and I played percussion overdubs on one track that had started like the day before. And I went back to the control room. I opened up all my cases. Tom could see all my instruments. I had 3 different drum sets. I had 40 different cymbals. I had gongs from China and bells from Japan, and car parts, and furniture, and all kinds of other stuff, which I figured he might like, because I did my research and had an idea of what he might like. And he also liked being shown everything. Here's what all these instruments look like. So from him as being really good with characters, I thought that might be. Here's the psychology thing. Again, I did my homework. How do I think this artist thinks? So not coming in going like, I'm this really interested, I'm confident, young percussionist who got, recommended for this gig, so let's go. It was more like, how can I be useful? What in your thinking about your music is something that I can help move forward? So he liked that attitude. He liked what I played on that first song. And then I was in the band. That was it. So again, from a networking teaching point of view, the day before I went into that session with Tom, I was a really interesting New York percussion player. The day afterwards, I was Tom Waits' percussionist. Night and day, as far as being perceived in the industry.
So how has that changed your life?
Well, so many people were interested in who was playing with Tom then. That record, Rain Dogs, was a big breakthrough for him. So I guess part of the short answer is, during the tour, when the record came out, it got a lot of attention from all the different music magazines. And he already had a lot of fans and supporters who were also artists. So We did a week on Broadway. We were all over the United States. Went to Europe. So it was a big thing. The Rain Dogs album was a big thing for him and for us. And again, in the old days, on an album or on a CD, you had all the information, all of the people who played on it, their names spelled correctly, who produced the record, what studios, who mixed it, who mastered it, the record label contacts and all that sort of stuff. So if one was interested in an artist's work, right in front of you was all of what we now called a metadata. But it was right there. It was in your hand. So, all those players are on that record. That's pretty cool. And anyway, long story longer, who came to the shows over the years? It was Mark Knopfler, it was Bette Midler, it was Bonnie Raitt, it was David Bowie, it was David Byrne, Elvis Costello, and lots of people were big fans of Tom's. And then they were huge fans of that record. And that band was a really, really great band. We rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. So anyway, Elvis Costello called me for a session in Los Angeles when we were doing a Tom Waits project in Los Angeles. So I did my first session with Elvis Costello on a record called King of America. It was the last track that they were working on. And from a networking point of view, what ended up happening was, because so many people, artists that actually had really good bands and record contracts, and they were touring and making albums, they loved a lot of the stuff that Tom was doing, and they loved us. So they kept in touch with us. So Mark Rebo, the guitarist, and I both went into what ended up being the bigger Elvis Costello band. So we worked with him off and on for years, and I still keep in touch with him. So from a networking point of view, I was lucky to play with somebody that other people cared about from a music point of view. It wasn't like, oh, that's really good and blah, 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 blah. It was like, no. Who was that? Who were those guitar players? Who was playing bass on that? What is that percussion player doing? What's the drummer thinking? Like, the deep dive, as we say in English, then into the artist, into the sessions, into how a record was actually created. So, long answer again, as usual for me, but it's all connected. And that actually gets back to what networking is and everything. Everything is actually all connected. That's the way. Maybe I'm an old California hippie. I am an old California hippie. But the idea that all ideas are on the table and you just need to grab them, or every artist has a point of view, and as a player working with that artist, part of the job is to get the artist to feel more confident and more safe in what they're trying to get across. So as a player, then I can make better decisions, not just listen to how good I am or my confidence and blah, 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 and flibbity-wibbity, 50 million symbols. And, it's like, no. Artist, producer, what do you need? What kind of story are you trying to tell? No matter what kind of music it is. The story needs to be told by the players that are being asked to be in the room. So, and all of the artists that I've ever worked with knew that I took that really seriously.
I was going to ask you, do you have a final advice for young musicians? But I guess this was it.
That's true. If you want to wrap up, there's a whole lot of other stuff that, I'm 70 fucking years old, so, there's a lot under the bridge, as we say. But yes, the main thing would be every single thing from the first gig to yesterday's gig, that's an ongoing process. And to worry about it or be, it's hard for me to talk to people. We'll find out another way to express yourself. Maybe with the best part of social media now is that people who aren't very, socially, out in people's face, sort of like I am. It's easy for me to talk to anybody, and that might not be true for other people. But there might be another way to approach somebody. To get on email or go on TikTok or go, find who the manager is or express, the one's fascination and desire, to maybe try something with somebody, be brave in that way. half the time it'll fail, half the time it'll be a really interesting conversation which could lead to something else. But you're absolutely right.
And in the spirit of networking, meeting people, can people find you somewhere? Can they connect with you?
Yes. The easiest way would be to find me on LinkedIn. I appreciate TikTok and Instagram and all that other stuff, but I don't take tons of pictures of myself, and I certainly don't take pictures of myself eating breakfast and or what my latest drumstick is and all that other stuff. But I'm absolutely on LinkedIn, and I'm the Michael Blair who looks like me.
You don't do any of the TikTok dances yet?
No, I don't.
As always, the very last question. Mm-hmm. What is the power of music?
The power of music brings us all together. Every human is hardwired for music as a second language, or even as a first language, if you talk to linguists and historians and stuff. So I think music is the most interesting and comprehensive tool, that we have to actually bring people together. Again, that's sort of like a Southern California hippie sort of thing, but it's absolutely true. When I teach, it works. When I'm working with an artist, that changes the mood in a room and brings a whole audience together, it works. I've seen it work, and I feel it works. So yeah, it's the power of community building.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening. If you want more information about JM, or you would like to get involved, visit www.jmi.net. At JMI, we are on a mission to make the world more musical. That's why we created Mubazar, a digital platform that helps us manage all our musical activities across 80 countries worldwide, connecting musicians with opportunities to grow both personally and professionally. If you are a music professional looking for a better way to manage and promote your music activities, check out Mubazar. Created for music organizers, by music organizers, Mubazar allows you to run music competitions, workshops, camps, auditions, masterclasses, awards, events, and much more. Mubazar offers custom application forms, payments for your activities, jury tools, translations, analytics, and more. Mubazar is fast becoming the best place for musicians to find and apply for music opportunities online, and you can sign up today for a free organizer account by going to www.mubazar.com, registering, and then requesting to upgrade to an organizer on the right-hand menu. For more info, don't hesitate to get in touch via support@mubazar.com. It would mean a lot to us if you could give us 1 minute of your time and rate and review the podcast. In case you have any suggestions or would like to be one of our next guests, feel free to reach out to us through the JMI socials.